I cut my hair and can now feel the wind whistle across my scalp like an airbender. In author news, Stephen King apparently undermines the value of all life. The author of Fight Club had millions embezzled from him, book stuffing runs rampant in Kindle Unlimited, and many more. This is Author News, and I'm your host, Noah Barfield. First off, let's discuss the rape-happy, child-murdering maniac Stephen King and this author's twisted worldviews. The first piece comes courtesy of Brian Shoemaker at the Lexington Herald-Leader in his article entitled "Our Stephen King-Ishy Culture Undermines the Value of Life." Now let's pause here for a moment and truly appreciate the creative whimsy expressed by Mr. Shoemaker in his titling process. Stephen King-ishy culture. Just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? That's true talent right there. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Stephen King, don't get me wrong, I don't read all of his stories. But I do think this article comes across as a bit, excessive. Basically what it says is that books and films like Stephen King shows an ugly and unnecessarily violent side of humanity that desensitizes us as a whole. It cites Salem's Lot, Carrie, Cujo, and It. As Mr. Shoemaker puts it, no filter, no buffers, just outright brutality perpetrated upon an innocent and unsuspecting boy. Dismemberment of the boy's arm in the teeth of a predator, gushing blood and all. Then he is quickly swept away down the sewer, washed away as if nothing happened. You described that in pretty vivid detail, didn't you, Mr. Shoemaker? Is that a fantasy of yours? I think this article would make a valid point if it didn't show examples of stories where the atrocities committed were generally done by the villains. Nobody is thinking Pennywise is the good guy here for killing small children. These stories are about showing an ugly side of the villains that we can rally behind and call for their downfall and defeat. Also, let's face it, bad things happen to kids all the time. While we argue amongst ourselves about definitions and policy issues, human trafficking is at an all-time high. Kids are taken away and treated, to put it mildly, very badly. Having media or literature that shows us this might be a wake-up call for discussion rather than desensitization. This article asked us about the deeper questions. It asks, have we become so uncompassionate for life, of all life, that we can no longer distinguish between that is wholesome and that is horrible? I recently killed a kid in Tale of the Nameless God. I'm kind of proud of it too, actually. And I didn't do this because I dislike children or because I think society at large is horrible. I did it to showcase that bad things happen to people that don't deserve them, and to motivate my characters to change that. Things are only wholesome based upon that there are also things that are horrible. Take it as you will, but in my opinion, we need a little perspective on both of these things. Speaking of horrible things, let's talk about travesty. That's always fun, right? Chuck Palahniuk, recently suffered a loss, a $3.4 million loss, that is. Darren Webb, an accountant at the Donadio, I don't know what it is with all these names. An accountant at the Donadio and Olson Literary Agency in New York was charged with embezzling $3.4 million from the company. That's 3.4 million. Million, with a capital pain K. So who is this Palahniuk guy anyway, and why should we care? Chuck Palahniuk is the author of Fight Club, which got turned into the movie Fight Club, which is one of my favorites. It starred Ed Norton and Brad Pitt, and to be frank, it is awesome. And this is why it hurts, to see someone so talented taken so advantage of. Palahniuk's income had reportedly been dwindling for a few years until finally he said the trickle of my income had stopped. This has left the talented author, in his own words, close to broke. I also think it's an important lesson here, something that we can glean as we struggle to become successful authors like Mr. Palahniuk in our own right. No matter how big you are, or how well you do, or how great of a writer you are not invincible. Well, most of the time. Fortunately, friends and readers have rushed to Palahniuk's aid, and Darren Webb is being dealt with legally. However, I really wouldn't want to mess with the guy who created Project Mayhem. Just saying. And now we get to my favorite segment of Author News, and hopefully your favorite in the episodes to come. It is story time, where I get to read stories submitted to me by different people that have said that yes, I can read this online for free. Today's story is Flat Horizon by Elizabeth Foran. Grandmother once told me that when a little child sleeps, the spiders crawl in through their open mouths and down into their little bellies, where they reach the child's soul. The spiders spend all night weaving their webs around it to keep the bad spirits out. They devour the demons caught in the web before they creep in and steal the soul of the young one. But you always slept underneath the covers, Grandmother would say. The spiders could never get in and couldn't catch the bad spirits before they claimed you. This is why the crops are dying. You've brought evil among us. And now, back to author news. Our next story is from Inc.com. I'm hoping next week that I get to read stories from LLC.org and Corp.gov. But what is this story anyway? Book stuffers. Book stuffers are not, as you might imagine, people who make plush figures of books and then stuff them full of fluffy foam. They are people who are abusing the Kindle Unlimited platform and the payment that it provides. For a flat monthly fee, Kindle Unlimited lets you read whatever books you want that are part of the Kindle Unlimited library. And that library is quite extensive. However, books published on Kindle Unlimited can't really be published anywhere else, so a lot of traditional publishers don't use it. It's used a lot by self-published authors or more independent authors. And there's a bit of a trade-off. With Kindle Unlimited, you're not paid by each time people read your book, but rather each time people read a page of your book. In Kindle Unlimited, they pay you a whopping half a cent per page read. You can't beat that anywhere else, guys. So for your average 300-page novel, that's about $1.50 per book. For a longer read, like Legendland, I would get paid about $2.50 every time someone finished the book. And if I had dozens to hundreds of people reading my book daily, well, you can start to see that add up, especially if you write regularly and publish them on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. However, therein lies the rub. It's less about quality and more about quantity, and book stuffers are more than happy to take advantage of that. Book stuffers are people who throw in a bunch of bonus material, or extras, as part of the book. A lot of it is just spammy stuff, or giveaways that require you to read all the way through to the end to take advantage of whatever they've promised. Many of these stuffed books run around 3,000 pages, which is the maximum Amazon will pay for, which accounts to around $13.50 per book. That's a lot better than the $2.50 I would make from people reading Legendland. And if people are constantly having to swipe past all of those spammy pages, it can quickly add up. But here's my reservation. People are still buying the books. They're still buying these books written by the stuffers, by the people who couldn't care less about quality. Readers are still engaging in them, enjoying them, reading them. So if the readers don't care, what's really the problem? Well, I'm personally not a fan of this method. I find it dishonest, cheap, and demeaning to other authors who work hard to get where they're at, like myself. I also recognize that it's an actual strategy. Not a reputable one, but it exists. However, any book stuffers who are breaking Amazon's rules, and there are plenty of them, should be given the boot, with extreme prejudice. I don't necessarily believe in price caps, algorithm changes, or anything like that. People need to play by Amazon's rules. It's their system, and work their butts off to succeed within that framework. If you work hard at it, if you constantly strive, even when there seems like there's no tomorrow, you will pull through. Even if you have to constantly fight to get your book recognized above all the drivel, that means you're determined and dedicated, something many book stuffers don't have in surplus at least. A great thing seems even greater when there's a lot of not so great things around it. I can personally attest to this, whenever I walk into a crowd. Anyway, instead of putting price caps or changing payment options because of the book stuffers, work harder than them to succeed despite them. Or to spite them. However, I cannot conclude this segment lest we forget the other options. Amazon is not the only fish out there. There's also Patreon, independent sales conventions, and many more options and a writer's toolkit. Don't let yourself get weighted down by the seemingly impossible circumstances stacked against you. Before we start jumping to conclusions and grabbing our pitchforks, as much as I like that, let's take a step back first and look at all of our options. Fortunately, our final story is all about the options. Allow me to introduce you to the Novel Network, a website dedicated to matching up authors with book clubs. I love the name, and the service definitely captured my attention. I just wish I had thought of the name first, because I just think that Noah's Novel Network has a really nice ring to it. Don't you think? Novel Network is free for book clubs to join. Your book club has to have a minimum of 6 members within it, but after that, you're good to go. If you're an author on the other side, It's a little different story, mostly because it's not free. You have to pay $149 a year, and you get to see all the book clubs listed in your area. So depending on where you're at, this can be a hit or miss. But you have the benefits of everything right there for you and knowing exactly who you need to contact. There's also the visiting fee charged by Novel Network, which really made me wary whenever I first looked at it, but I think it's ultimately a good thing. It's kind of a double-edged sword though. It's great for authors, but not so great for book clubs. For a 6 to 15 member book club, you have to pay a $100 visitation fee to the author for their time, for them to come to visit you. This can help the author pay for traveling fees, their time, etc. It makes the author feel valued. It makes us feel special. And here, and here, and here, everywhere. This can get kind of draining on a book club's resources, especially if they've already bought your book already. Yeah. I'm personally not a member of the Novel Network, though it does intrigue me, as you can probably see from my apparent interest in it. I'm also not sponsoring or promoting them, just to put that out there. I just came across it, thought it would be nice to share in here. If you live in a higher population density area, it may seem like it could be beneficial to you or to any writers out there. But if you're an author in your isolated cabin in like Colorado, it's probably much less useful. Before I finish off this video, I would like to just thank all of you for watching. I know my upload schedule has been pretty irregular recently, and I really apologize for that profusely, intensely, as much as I can. I apologize. I'm hoping to put in less editing effort and be able to make videos faster that way. That way I don't have to focus on the editing, post visual effects, stuff like that. I can just kind of chop it up and I can put more effort into the actual beforehand part. I focus more on creating the videos and maybe streamline a little more with better scripts. You know, writing scripts. Like writing, like an author, like I am. Yeah, which hopefully means I'll be able to churn out these videos a little faster. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you all for watching, and to please leave a like, check out Legendland and Tale of the Nameless God, subscribe, ding the bell because that's a thing you have to do now, I guess, and check back later for a new video. Thanks, bye!